and welcome to ITV News West Country. I'm Kylie Pentelow.
And I'm Ian Axton. Tonight's main stories. Clogged up rivers, the residents who blame government cuts for the floods on the Somerset levels.
We're seeing the water still rising at still a very good rate. We're only probably about 2 days off from having it around the house.
The human cost of the super pylons planned for Somerset.
Our charity is trying to keep Wiltshire's air ambulance in the skies.
And a Jurassic discovery. We meet the fossil hunter who's just found an amazing skeleton. Good evening. People are still having to be rescued from the Somerset levels as the area continues to fill up with water pouring in from nearby hills.
Residents say the government and the Environment Agency must dredge the rivers and build new defences to protect them. Well, in a moment we'll be hearing the government response to that. But first, our Somerset correspondent David Woodland has spent another day with the people battling against the elements.
The Somerset levels are now a series of vast inland lakes. Millions of tonnes of water gathered in from as far away as Exmoor. Throw a cup of water down a drain in Wiveliscombe 20 miles away and it'll end up here. For the people living down here, it's beyond a joke. Here's one family's story. Where Farmer James Hall is standing was dry yesterday. The floodwater is creeping ever closer to his parents' bungalow.
It's very worrying. We're seeing the water still rising at still a very good rate. We're only probably about 2 days off from having it around the house.
At the family farm, the cattle are at risk as the waters are now lapping at the yard. The animals will have to be driven and fed elsewhere. It's a lot of work to do that. James's sister's house flooded twice as the storm surge sent water up the tidal River Parrett. She's pregnant and had just got the house ready for the baby. They want the bank built up higher, but have been told silt from the river can't be piled on the bank under EU rules because it's classed as hazardous waste.
We had 3 foot of water in the driveway when it topped over. We had a Fiesta car parked here which was lifted up and taken into the gateway. My new works van had about a foot of water in the back. It's a transporter van, so all my tools are damaged.
People in Moorland are living on the edge. There's only a very thin, narrow earth bank separating them from the River Parrett on the other side. The water level at the moment is still higher than their houses, and that's with the tide going out. When it's coming in, the water is 4 feet higher.
My husband has a book on the levels, a new book that's been published, and you see the pictures of before and now. It is just awful, the difference. The river is half the size it was before.
Northmoor pumping station is working at full tilt. Extra generators, pumps and pipes have been brought in, but the water running in is greater than that going out. The plea, repeated everywhere here, is for massive dredging, advance warnings, sandbags and a barrage at the mouth of the River Parrett. David Woodland, ITV News, Moorland near Bridgewater.
So residents and farmers on the levels argue that better dredging of rivers and waterways would ease the flooding, but the Environment Agency stopped regular dredging more than a decade ago and proposed a new scheme, and that is now £2 million short.
Now MPs are warning something must be done, as our political correspondent Bob Constantine now reports.
The Somerset levels are once again underwater, but can more be done to prevent this kind of regular flooding? Routine dredging of rivers, allowing more water to escape, was stopped by the Environment Agency around 12 years ago.
I think the question on everyone's lips around here is what are the EA going to do, Environment Agency going to do about, the levels in the rivers? They just haven't got the capacity for the water. We've been made aware by the Environment Agency guys themselves that the rivers are up to 65% silted. So it's a pure question of capacity.
A stretch of the River Tone near Taunton was dredged back in 2001 following another wet winter. The Environment Agency has recently been doing some trials on that and 3 other rivers, the Parrett, the Brew and the Axe, to find the most effective method of clearing them. Ironically, that's been suspended because of the weather. Any future scheme is likely to cost £3 million, but only £1 million has been pledged so far. Now a committee of MPs has warned against neglecting essential maintenance.
We were surprised to learn there's only a pot of £20 million each year across the whole of England and ours and Wales as well to clear out the major watercourses. So that is a very small pot of money indeed, but it can actually be crucial to maintain those watercourses to ensure that the land is not saturated.
The government argues it's putting record amounts into flood defence and denies that cuts at the Environment Agency will affect its ability to do the job.
The Environment Agency have done a fantastic job in getting that warning out there and in dealing with the issues in the flooding we've experienced over this winter period. But we're absolutely clear that we're giving enough money to the Environment Agency. The Chief Executive now will be looking at prioritising those frontline important response services like tackling flooding issues.
Tonight the government said, we are continuing to look at ways of improving flood risk management on the Somerset levels and helping the local community to explore a range of options, including dredging.
Our political correspondent Bob Constantine with that report there, and we can cross to him in Westminster. Bob, the government coming under some pressure over this, even though, of course, they're not responsible for the weather, are they?
Well, no, of course, they're not responsible for the weather, but when disasters strike, and I think you can call this a bit of a disaster, people do ask questions about the degree of planning, the effectiveness of the response, and, of course, measures to prevent similar things happening again. Now, the debate about dredging has been going on the Somerset levels for many years. One of the campaigners for that is the Somerset and Frome MP, David Heath, who is with me now. You raised this with the Environment Secretary. What sort of response did you get?
Well, I've been raising it now for a very long time, and we've certainly had very useful discussions over the last year. I had the then Floods Minister, Richard Benyon, down to Langport to talk about it, and we've been making progress. The key is that we haven't had proper maintenance of the watercourses, I think, for far too long. And that means clearing out the waterways and marines, but it also means dredging the big rivers, that's the Parrett, the Tone, and I would add to that the Brew and the Axe, making sure that they have the capacity to get water away. We can't stop the Somerset levels having floods on them. That's going to happen. That's part of life. But what we can do is make sure that we get that water away as quickly as possible, and hopefully without causing disruption to people and flooding of people's houses.
Inevitably, it's a question of money. The Environment Agency say they've been doing some trials to see what is the most cost-effective method. What should they do now?
Well, first of all, we need to continue with what's already now been put in place, which is letting local people do a lot of the clearance of local waterways. But what we need from the Environment Agency is the commitment to regular maintenance of those rivers, making sure that they're dredged, making sure that the silt is removed, so that they have the capacity to get the water away to sea.
And they did that at one time. I'm not clear why they stopped.
Yeah, years ago they did, and then for decades we've had very little. And I think it's a major contribution to the problems that we now see on the levels, and particularly if you remember last year on Currymore, where the water just stayed for month after month after month. Now, that's not acceptable, and that's what I'm campaigning for, to make sure that the Environment Agency uses some of the money that's given to it to properly maintain the watercourses and get that water moved as quickly as possible.
All right, David Heath, thank you very much indeed. A former Environment Minister himself, of course, so he knows that of which he speaks. Of course, that water could be around for, and this story, for quite a long time to come.
Indeed, Bob Constantine, thank you very much.
And you can catch up with all our coverage on the floods on our website. The address is coming up for you on the screen now. Plenty